In this video we're going to learn about some effects and use a layer mask to create a blurred image effect. So this is the photo we're going to be working with. This technique really works well if you want to create an effect where you're going to have it in parts of the image but not in all parts of the image. And for this we're going to start by copying this background layer. Two ways we can do that. Drag it down, drop it on the new layer button. I'm going to Command Z and undo that. We can also hit Command J. You can remember that. That's called jumping a layer. And basically my effects are going to go on layer 1 and my background is going to stay as a pure layer with unchanged pixels. So now we'll apply our effect, and our effects are found under the filter menu. And just a word of caution, you want to be conservative when you apply effects. Think of putting on too many as kind of overdoing it, and just be cautious with it. It can look a little bit like, a 3-year-old went crazy if you go too far on this. So we're going to go into our blur and we're going to do a motion blur. We might also try radial blur for what I'm thinking. So here's our motion blur dialog box, and it gives us a preview of what this looks like. And we're also viewing it live in the screen. That's before and that's after. I might like that for a look. So that's what motion blur looks like. We're actually cancel that. So let's see what that looks like with the radial blur I talked about earlier. So we'll go to Filter, Blur, Radial Blur. And I'm going to apply, let's say, 21. We don't have a preview with this, so I'm going to hit OK. We'll see what we get out of this. That's kind of interesting. One thing to note, we have permanently changed pixels on that, which is okay. If we wanted to have our filter work more like an effect that we could alter and delete, we would actually need to change this layer to a smart object. So I'm going to show you that as a kind of third way of doing this. With our layer selected, we're going to go to Layer, Smart Object, and Convert to Smart Object. I can also reach that through this drop-down menu over here. Now I'll go back to Filter, and I'm going to apply that same radial blur and hit OK. But when I apply it, I have an effects panel up. So if I double click here, I can go back and change the blend of it. I can double click the radial blur, increase it if I want. And so that's a nice way to create a filter effect on top of your image, is to use that smart filter technique. And I kind of like this. I think I'm going to play around with what that looks like. So I want to start bringing in some of the detail back into this image. To do that, I am going to create a mask, and that's right here, a layer mask. Notice it comes in here, it comes in white. I'm going to grab my brush tool. When I choose a brush, you want to kind of think about, do I want a hard brush or a soft brush? I'm going to kind of go in the middle. I'm going to get a little bit bigger of a brush to work with to start, and that is good. I'm also going to be painting with black, and here's why. Black is going to reveal what's on this layer below. Think of it as cutting out this image to reveal what's behind it. You can come in. I'm going to really increase my brush size so you can see what I'm doing here. And start bringing in the details I want to the photo. And you can use your brush size to really dial in specifically what you want to have blurred. If you accidentally do that, Hit the X key. Notice we're brushing with white now. Just reveal the blur back. So just toggling between black and white to either reveal or hide your layers. And kind of what I like to do when I'm working with this technique is do a very large brush to start out with and just kind of get the main idea of all the parts that I'm going to have brushed back into the photo. And then I would zoom in with my zoom tool and kind of hone in a little more specific. So again, back to my brush tool. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush using my left bracket. Paint some of this back in. And this is where having a diffuse edge on your brush is kind of nice. Again, left bracket to make it smaller. X key to swap my foreground and background. And just go along and paint through these changes until I have the look that I want. And because everything is done with a smart filter layer, I can still, even after I've done all this brushing, go back and tweak my radial blur on that smart filter. So that is how you create a blurred image effect using smart filters in Photoshop.